Here we go.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey,
Decently.
Bob.
Yourself?
Good, good, good. Good to see you.
I had an idea for you to do with
Yeah,
as
lay it
you
on me.
wish.
Yeah, please.
Um, James Joyce considered Vermeer's painting, A View of Delft, one of his favorite paintings.
Yeah.
And the idea that in the background of your comic, you could have Vermeer's view of Ingolstadt.
Okay,
And
yeah.
it could just like show up like on the Leif Erikson or in the Robert Putney Drake mansion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then
Absolutely.
years down the line, it could say the real one, got destroyed, but we have an Elmire forgery or something, some little,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
and you could just drop those visual cues. There could be a reproduction in a hotel room or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds fantastic to me. I just wrote it down. I believe me. I am looking for any and all suggestions. Yeah. So Eric, we don't have you for long. Is that correct?
Oh, dear. Sounds
I
ominous.
mean for the conversation, the conversation. You were
the,
leaving
the
early,
poor,
right?
the poor you will always have with you, but I will not be
Yeah,
here
no,
for
no.
long.
I mean in today.
Yeah, probably about 23 minutes.
Hmm. All right, all right. Well, let's make good usage of your time. Do you mind if I ask you a couple of like just like Illuminatus based questions that you might have a take on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what does Howard see in the ruins of Atlantis that he has to go tell Hagbard about? Now, I'm pretty sure it's evidence that the Dragon Star never fell, and I guess that the whatever happened to Atlantis didn't go down the way they previously thought. But do you know what he like physically, visually sees that he has to go tell him?
No,
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
but it seems like a hinge for Hagbard to decide to act violently.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so the whole question between Hagbard and the Dalai Lama
Yeah.
about how activism leads to violence, that whole Atlantis thing acts as a hinge on.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Also, I get the impression that the Atlantis material mostly came from Bob Shea.
Yeah, that's my impression as well. So that's probably why I don't know as much about it because it didn't continue. The thread didn't continue anywhere. It just kind of stops in Illuminatus, I assume. Do you know if Shea continued any of his plot threads in his books?
Have you read Shea's novels?
Not at all. I would like to, but I just haven't.
Especially as you have massive financial success from this comic book,
Sure,
you
yeah.
might want to look into them
Yeah,
because
yeah.
in many ways they function with Bob Wilson's novels.
Okay, good. That's what I was
So that
hoping.
he wrote 5 novels that focus on the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
And so like they give the prehistory that would go into Bob's historical Illuminatus series.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so I started with the Shike novels, which start off in, man, it's been so long, Japan and China, but they deal
Yeah.
with Kublai Khan and they go all over the place.
Okay, yeah.
Um, and so I remember when I first bought Shike, I said I didn't know if it came from the same Bob Shea who did Illuminatus, but like the first scene is an initiation, and then you have these 23s show up, and it's okay, yeah, this is our Robert Shea.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And Tom Jackson is editing a book of Robert Shea.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess it's like stuff that was never collected elsewhere, like his kind of zine writing and magazine writing and that sort of stuff.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. It was funny. So like as I was like first starting to put together the outline for what would become Tales of Illuminatus, I'm trying to like wrap my head around the timeline and all the details so I can know enough that if I want to play around, I'm not going to break something down the road by moving something here. and it's like, man, this is a lot. I just wish there was something that could help me. And then it turned out it's like, oh, do you think this book with your cover art on it that was sent to you for free that has been sitting in your, do you think this, might this help you in your, and it's like, yeah, that was, it was amazing. Like getting the timeline. It was insane. It was the whole thing laid out for me perfectly. And because what I was trying to get was that kind of like that overhead eagle eye view of it, and just so helpful. And I appreciate the coincidence that it just like yeah, that it's so obvious that that should have been my first thought, but it's like I had to look at my bookshelf and be like, oh yeah. And yeah, so this thing has been invaluable in the efforts. And
Well, that's thank you.
yeah,
Do
thank
you know
you.
the book The Illuminoids by Neil Wilgus?
I've heard of it and I've seen it like quoted places, but I've never read it.
If I could find if I find my copy, I'll send it to you. Bob Wilson wrote the introduction, a nonfiction book on conspiracy theory, I think from the late 70s, early 80s, but he has a lot of timeline type stuff in
Oh,
that
okay.
book.
Yeah.
And I think he and Bob Wilson had a bit of a falling out, but in terms of timeline stuff, I used it. You might find it useful as well.
Oh, interesting. So it's like I thought it was like a novel itself. It's not. Okay. Cool.
Nonfiction dealing with conspiracy theories.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that'd be great. Let me think. What else? I had a couple other. Um, what do you? Is it known what the Fernando Poe incident is? Actually, let me give you another one. We, as we have it right now, we are correcting the misspelling because it's a real place. I know it's not called that anymore, but I don't know why it's spelled that way, and I can't defend it as something that I'm saying. I'm not, you know what I mean? So I'm correcting it back to its original spelling because someone says, why are you like making excrement joke about this real place? I can't defend it. Is there a deeper meaning as to why there's an extra O there?
I think the Bobs found it funny.
Yeah.
Dealing with the hinge of nuclear war, it certainly links with the second anal circuit.
Yeah.
And you know that the explorer, Sir Richard Francis Burton, his autobiography he called From Liverpool to Fernando Poe.
Okay. Yeah.
So tying in the Yellow Submarine but the incident I think refers to the whole question about whether it will start nuclear war.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
There is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There is another possible meaning, and it's I'm kind of getting it from a bad source here or a fake source, but I actually think it's a good theory. So this is put forward by basically an imaginary historical figure who was created by a Discordian who we could say is in ill repute. But they basically said, well, Fernando, as in, the famous Fernando the Bull. And so Fernando Poo, as with, is, a reference to bullshit.
Yeah. That is pretty good. Write that down. All right, so hello everybody that just joined us. It's so good to see you. Eric has to go to a family function in a little bit, so I was trying to get as much out of him as we can before he goes. Great to see everybody. If you guys want, I figured a good way to start would be to just quick introduction for yourself, and maybe how did Illuminatus find you in your life, and what impact did it have on you? I'll give you an example. Hello, everyone. I'm Bobby Campbell, a cartoonist from Audubon, New Jersey. And I found the Illuminatus trilogy. My housemate left it in my bedroom next to my bed with no explanation. And I picked it up, and I'd already read Leary and Lilly and Watts and McKenna and Crowley and everybody. So when I picked it up, it was like everyone took it's like they took everything I was reading, put it in a blender and just supercharged it. And I couldn't put the thing down. I read all 800 pages in 3 days. And just like, if I wasn't working, I was reading the book. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything but read that book. And that was how it got me. Anyone else want to jump in and say how it got you?
I came to it quite late, so I found a lot of Discordian stuff when I was in university, and that was that was all a really big influence. Illuminatus, I probably read past the first book for the first time probably last year or the year before that. So I actually came to it really late. Like I sort of had the influence of it. But really the influence for me was I was working on a like an extended piece of writing, and it kind of just embedded itself in that. But everything that it kind of I probably came to it like quite late for it to have like any sort of major disruptive impact. Like I thought it was fantastic. But yes, I think the secondhand influence of Illuminatus through a lot of the other Discordian content was what hit me harder, just because of just the way that timing worked out in this case.
That makes sense. That makes sense. All right, who else got a story for us?
Hello, this is Oz here. I got my mind blown in my early 20s reading Cosmic Trigger, and it just introduced me to everything that's in Cosmic Trigger. And I think probably the Crowley stuff was what hit me most. So I started looking for anything by Robert Anton Wilson, and the first thing I came across was the 3 individual copies of the Illuminatus trilogy, where they're published in separate paperbacks. And I found it very difficult to read at first, but that never stops me. I'll just read something and hope that my subconscious mind is taking it in. And the impact it had on me at first, because my introduction to Wilson and to Crowley was basically simultaneously. So I was learning about them both, and for Illuminatus to me was like a seminar or something on Crowley, and that's kind of where I started learning about him, even before I read Crowley's books themselves, which I largely didn't understand also. So it kind of provided the way. But I also loved, like in Cosmic Trigger, he talks about Discordianism, and that's, got a prominent role in Illuminatus, as well as the 23 Enigma that's in Illuminatus. So it's kind of like Illuminatus was expanding all the things that had blown my mind in Cosmic Trigger. And also around that time, from Cosmic Trigger, I got into John Lilly and all his dolphin stuff. And of course, you have, I think his name is Howard, the talking dolphin in there. And then there's the, of course, I'm really big into music. I was a huge Beatles fan. And, their Hagbard is traveling around in a yellow submarine. And so I think I got more out of Illuminatus upon subsequent rereadings. And, because now I could understand it more. I could see some of the more Joycean elements in it. And I was hoping to read it before today again, but I didn't get a chance. But it's, I think, a probably book I'll return to again and again until I can no longer read.
That's great. Eva, we're going around and everyone's introducing themselves and telling the origin story of how Illuminatus found them and how it impacted you.
Awesome. Thanks. Sorry for being late.
No such thing.
Okay.
Does anybody else want to go? Anybody else got a story? If not, I have a couple of questions to work through. And it's great. Borski, so good to see you. I'm so glad that you're here. It's funny. So many of my like Kabbalistic reference points are through you, and no one else knows this, like the specific stuff I picked up from you. So I'm like, do you remember this thing where it's this, this, and this? And people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I'm glad that you're here. Okay, so in the way that they have the Tree of Life structured, so all the different trips or chapters are the different Sephiroth of the Tree of Life. So the thing that I'm kind of wondering about, because I don't know that much about the Tree of Life and the paths through the Sephiroths, is this meant to be a collective journey that you go through the different paths to the different Sephiroth, or an individual journey, or both? Because I feel like when I hear people talk about it, sometimes they're talking about how they're moving through the Tree of Life on these paths, and sometimes they talk about how the world is moving through. So yeah, so if anyone can give me a clue. Eric, looks like you have an idea. I think you're muted. You're muted.
Maybe I'm muted for a reason. I feel like, again, I'm thinking about your comic book and the idea that this is going to be so successful, it's going to inspire TV and this renaissance. I think about how when Blade Runner came out in '82, I was so angry. I was actually angry at God. The only time in my life I felt that experience when Phil Dick died, because I knew in a few months his books would be at the grocery store checkout. And so I've waited for 40 years for Bob Wilson to have his grocery store moment. But and again, you can take this or leave this. I know Ava likes Duolingo. Duolingo Hebrew has a nice feature for learning the Hebrew alphabet. And visually, I think you might find that really interesting, because a lot of what Duolingo does with the Hebrew alphabet is it has you draw the letters.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And for Oz was talking about, first time I read, when I used to read Crowley 40 years ago, I didn't understand him at all until I learned the Hebrew alphabet. Bobby, Bob, excuse me. Do you own a copy of the Book of Thoth by Crowley?
No, I don't have that. I have 777, but I don't have the Book of Thoth.
Book of Thoth would be, I think, would be very useful for you to own, trying to deal with the Kabbalah and Illuminatus. At the very back, there are appendices, and there are 3 versions of the Tree of Life. And I don't have my copy in front of me. I think Oz can probably tell you. I think it's the first version. And in the notes, Crowley says something like, until you memorize this diagram, the tarot and the Kabbalah will be a confusing mystery to you. And so if you just take, you could do it in a couple of weeks, go through the Hebrew and learn the alphabet and memorize just those basic correspondences. That's the skeleton of Illuminatus. Oh my God, I'm doing Trump here. That's the skeleton of, I think, how Bob made the dub Bobs made the scaffolding of Illuminatus. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Oz, Borsky, do you guys have any insights into the Tree of Life here?
Yeah, well, all I can say is, pardon my accent, I'm from Belgium. All I can say is according to the Kabbalah, there are 4 realms: the worldly realm, the realm of the soul, the realm of the spirit, and the divine realm. And actually, there's one beneath it, the Gehenna, which it was translated as hell later on. And according to the Kabbalah, there are 4 trees, and one in verse 3, who correspond to the Sephirah, each of them. And there are shortcuts if you pass through the middle gate, if you take the middle road. So I suppose basically the journey in Illuminati might be seen as the journey upwards. And to answer your question, it's both. You start as an individual. Even in Gehenna, it's said there's the consciousness of a stone, so even below individual, and you go up the tree because that's the tree you've fallen from. The Kabbalah, well, I haven't read much of Crowley, but I started reading the first chapter of the Zohar, which I suppose is hard enough. According to the Kabbalah, the story of the Kabbalah is from the top to the bottom, and you're meant to do the opposite journey. So it teaches you to start from personal consciousness to group consciousness to species consciousness to and so on until at the end there should be only one consciousness, because duality is an illusion.
Oh, I get it. Okay, yeah. That makes sense. So that's how it's both an individual and a collective journey. That's great. I like that. And then, so I wonder so that you have the tree and the stone in there, which is a big part of Finnegan's Wake. The tree and the stone, which have their hidden unity in coal, because the tree decays into the stone, so that it's the hidden unity between the tree and the stone. I wonder if that's intentional on Joyce's part, because that's in Finnegan's Wake as well, the Kabbalistic stuff, right?
Very much so, yes. That is a traditional way of using the tree of life, is ascending different gradations of consciousness. I believe that's how the AA uses it, is that you're supposed to go through each sphere at a time and assimilate and learn the residents of that sphere or whatever. I personally never used it that way. I've used it as, and I think it's to me, it's subjective, that you can use it, that there's multiple ways of using it. So I haven't used it as a, trying to ascend the tree of life or whatever, but I've used it as like a communication device, so that if I have a dream of something and, I dream of a certain colored stone or whatever, and what is my subconscious trying to tell me? Well, I'll look it up in 777 and see what that relates to. And so that's how I use it. Yeah.
I like it. I remember at Rawls Memorial, they had this big projector that would just, it looked like it was just showing a bunch of images that were on his computer. And there was a comic strip I had done that was just on my website that must have got pulled down from my, so I'm looking, I'm just seeing something that like I didn't really post anywhere, like for real. And it's a lady with an Ouroboros circle, the snake eating its tail, and the lightning bolt. And it's text from Black Elk Speaks, where it's like you put the lightning in the sacred circle and make the shielding tree and bloom. And I have it, it's the tree of life schematic growing out of it. I didn't know what any of it meant. I was just putting things together. But I'm walking around Robert Anton Wilson's memorial, and my comic strip is up on the wall about this lady growing the tree of life. So I guess it's been there the whole time. I just didn't know what it meant. So it's not unusual. So because one of my reference points for the Kabbalistic stuff is Grant Morrison. And the way he made it really comprehensible to me is he took his eras of the comics he's done and separated them into all the lower Sephiroth. So he's like, JLA is this one, Animal Man is this one. So I was like, oh, I get this. I read all that. But in his, it's from the bottom working its way up, whereas in Illuminatus, it's from the top working down. So is there any particular significance to which way you go?
I think the way Wilson and Shea, and I think it's why we originated from Wilson structured Illuminatus, is coming from what Crowley calls the Naples arrangement. Okay, and I think again that is that an appendix in Tree of Book of Thoth? I think there's an appendix of Book of Thoth that's the Naples arrangement. And yes. So that's this idea. I love Grant Morrison. Israel Regardi says over and over again, be careful of confusing the levels.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And so, and again, I am by no means, I'm in my teacher lecturer mode here. You might find it useful to read a book like Major Trends in Jewish Mysticism by Gershom Scholem, to just get a historical background of the Jewish tradition of Kabbalah. Because what happens is everybody sort of takes it and does their own thing with it. And so just if you, Wilson and Shea, especially Wilson, is very much coming out of Crowley and very much helped by Israel Ray Gardine.
Sounds awesome.
But it's gotten so diffused throughout so many levels of society. It's like I've been reading some Nietzsche this last month, and to realize how much my limited understanding of Nietzsche comes from Kelly Clarkson and all the different little places that Nietzsche shows up in our pop culture. And so as you're for a skeleton for your comic, just sort of see, we've got this Jewish tradition that gets expropriated by the Western occult tradition. And then Wilson says, ooh, and does his thing with it. And Bob Shea, they're doing that together. And then now that's manifested over 50 years at so many different levels in our culture. But I think it might be useful for you to sort of say, this is where it's coming from. Does that make some sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I better go. Thanks, everybody. I'm sorry I talked.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you so much.
Wonderful day.
Yeah, you as well. Borski, I still have this. The Neuro Tarot, which is has really helped in terms of trying to come up because I understand the 8th Circuit model, at least I'm comfortable with it, and so creating a bridge from the 8th Circuit model to the Tree of Life has been very helpful. But do you still find like is thinking of it in that terms helpful, or are there ways in which it's misleading that I should watch out for?
No, I still use it regularly. So
nice.
Basically what it does is more or less what Antero Ali told in his astrology courses. You interpret things in a new way, and that way you learn more about yourself and the way you work. That's how I see tarot. Just ways to see the knots, to see the threads, which you don't see normally. And I would only be careful in mangling things together, like the Kabbalah Tree of Life and the 4 circuits and astrology. These are totally different things, and I tend to not to try to find correspondences, but just enter another way of thinking. And
I see. Okay.
Learn more if you don't try to make connections, which of course you will make. But those connections won't tell you anything about yourself.
Yeah. So when it's the multiple symbol systems overlapping, that's multiple statements, not like a compound statement. Okay. That's great. That's great.
Yeah. Different point of view. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right. Let's see what else I got here.
I'll just elaborate on a previous question. There is quite a bit of Kabbalah in Finnegan's Wake. And one of my entry points into understanding that was from knowing some of the Kabbalah in it, so I could see where Joyce was coming from. I think Joyce is a brilliant Kabbalist. Eric mentioned the Naples arrangement that Crowley did, and there's at least 2 or 3 different Joycean versions of the Naples arrangement in there. So I think the answer is yes, there's a lot of Kabbalah in Finnegan's Wake. And about different systems, I think for me, they've always been helpful, not to like correspond one-to-one with one system to another, but they help explain each other. Like I found reading about Leary's C6 gives me a better idea of what is meant by the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel, which is related to Tifereth. And so the overlaps kind of help. I also found it very helpful to learn the Gurdjieffian system in relation to understanding Crowley's system and vice versa.
That's great. All right. So I have a question. I've asked 4 people this question. and it's a pretty evenly split in terms of which way they go in their answer. So I'm still balancing on the fence post here. So believe me, this is most likely a dead end question of no importance. So just whatever pops in your head. So I noticed in Illuminatus, the Bobs never refer to the Soviet Union. They never refer to the USSR. If you do a find and search in the text, they never say those terms. They only say Russia. So my question would be, is that just I wasn't around when they were writing this book. I don't know what things were like back then. Is this just how people talked? Or is it a creative decision that they made? I was thinking that possibly it was like to hide the timeline. They avoid saying what year it is. So is saying the Soviet Union, did they think that would anchor it in time? Probably not, because it had been around for so long. But so what do you guys think? Is it just a casual quirk of language, or an intentional creative choice?
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Steve Fly zooming in from Amsterdam. It's really good to see you all, man. Wicked. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
I mean, I just watched a documentary about the pianist James Booker from New Orleans. And interestingly, there's a line in one of his tunes where it talks about a Russian lady, right? But the idea is he's talking about Russian, like Russian, like he's Russian. So that's what popped into my mind. So maybe just Russians got more of a literary kind of pizzazz than the Soviet Union. I don't know.
Yeah, that was Michael Johnson's take. Was the sound of the word Russian is better than the sound of the word Soviet Union, which is like very like choppy and harsh, and whereas Russian just kind of, as you say, kind of flows better.
That's my 5 cents.
Yeah, I suspect that is the case, but I just like, because there were some people whose answer was absolutely not. Nobody called it Russia anymore. Everyone called it the Soviet Union. To avoid calling it the Soviet Union, it'd have to be intentional. But then Eric was like, no, everybody called it Russia still. So it's one of those interesting things where it's like, I have different people giving me very confident, contradictory answers, which is kind of perfect for Illuminatus.
Yeah, I would just jump in. I agree with Eric that people were also calling it Russia and Soviet Union like almost interchangeably.
Yeah.
And I think Russia is more of a casual reference than Soviet Union is more, I would see that as being more political, because it has to do with the whole Soviet bloc and all that stuff. But also there's way more, like if you consider that there's probably a Joyce influence in Illuminatus, there's way more, as Fly just mentioned, possibility for puns on Russia than there is on Soviet Union. So James Booker, I wonder if Russia is a little bit, that's a term in music for playing ahead of the beat. You're rushing it a little bit.
That's great. And this would be a good question for anyone, but Steve and Oz, you might have a particular anchor in this. So in the original cover art of Illuminatus, and it pops up a lot in the books, and it features heavily in Rawls' personal mythology. How do you see jazz music working its way through Illuminatus? Is it something thematically significant, do you think? Like, why did they put it on the cover of the book? Do you think, is it that important, or is it just a random reference? Hey, Zach, welcome aboard.
Sorry I'm late.
No such thing.
It's funny you ask, because my copy of Illuminatus, the cover is missing. Do you happen to have a cover of it so I can see? I don't even remember that. Yeah.
Where do I have it? Right here. See these guys over here? I believe it's supposed to be, what's the name of that band that was playing when Rawl first got stoned?
Modern Jazz Quartet?
Modern Jazz Quartet.
Right.
I believe, my guess is it's them. And my guess is also that that's maybe why it's there. but yeah, so and I'm partially curious because my son has gotten really into being a jazz musician. He's a really good trumpet player, and that's kind of informed. I've made Nkrumah Fubar a jazz musician in the book, and so I'm trying to anchor in more of the jazz component to it because it seems like, and especially because we have as you've seen hopefully from Steve and my friend Dan, we're having a huge music component to accompany the comic. So I'm looking for opportunities to thread jazz music throughout the story more. So if there was anything that jumped out at anybody, I'd furiously take notes.
Well, I'm familiar. There's an MJQ album called Pyramid, which has a image of the Cheops pyramid and the kind of star chambers on the cover, if I recall. And also they have a tune, God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, which I believe Bob was fond of. Perhaps their interpretation of the track. Yeah, that's my 5 cents.
That's quite good.
To Oz. Called MJQ.
I would just guess that it might have something to do with the style of the writing, because Joyce himself was always trying to be musical, and maybe there's something in the way they were writing that they were using jazz music as a metaphor for the sort of abstract, surrealistic aspects of it.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a improvisational style of writing, especially with them passing back and forth. So it seems like if it's not explicit, it's probably implicit in the craft of the story. Oh yeah, while we're still kind of lingering around the Kabbalah stuff, Borsky, you may so I've asked people a million times, and I'm pretty sure this came from you, but I just want to see if I'm imagining this or not. I remember there being an interpretation of Kabbalah where there's a version of the Book of Genesis where Adam gets put to sleep, and then it never in the text says that he gets woken up, and that it's basically all of creation is Adam's dream, and that it's basically you try to keep him asleep because if he wakes up, the whole show's over. Am I remembering that correctly? Did that come from you, or?
Yeah, well, not the last part. The intention is to waken up.
Okay, it is. Okay,
final intention is to waken up. So that was one version of Kabbalah that I learned from my teacher.
Okay, yeah.
Well, it starts with Adam starting to sleep, and never in the Bible they say he woke up. So you could say the entire Ancient Testament is the story of a dreamlike state of consciousness which tries to grow and tries to wake up. Just
I love
one
it.
way to.
Yeah, that's been stuck in my head for like 20 years. So I'm glad. Okay, so there is a source to it. I didn't imagine it. And I always connected that together with Finnegan's Wake in terms of the dreamer, as it's almost like in the I forget who it is, the dreamer that dreams the universe in Hinduism, and he goes through the cycle. He opens his eyes, and the age comes to a close. He closes his eyes, and it goes back to it. And that in Finnegan's Wake, the dreamer is dreaming that world into being. And yeah, okay, good. So that is something I can chase up. Okay, I got something else. Do we think so? At the end, it's hinted that Fuck Up is the narrator of the book, and that perhaps he has generated the story. Do we think do we think that is something? Is that a throwaway reference, or is that like canon to the story? And if so, did Fuck Up write the book as fiction or nonfiction? Did he make up the whole thing, or is he like a reporter reporting the events as he knows them? Does anyone have an opinion on Fuck Up as the creator of Illuminatus?
Maybe he's the dreamer of Illuminatus.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, maybe not a direct response to your question, but have any of you read Bodolino by Umberto Eco? You could very much compare that book with the story of a computer that writes the story.
Nice.
And then I don't know if Echo read Robert Anton Wilson. Probably had a gigantic library, so there might be a connection.
Yeah, Umberto Eco always gets brought up in whenever people are trying to create a long list of people raw influence. He always gets thrown on there to kind of like pad the stats, I think, with like the ones that are like, we're not sure, but we're going to count it anyway. Let's see what else. So I guess something to bring in. I had this written down because this was specifically for Vincent in mind, because he's like super duper into the AI stuff. About how like an AI creator of the book kind of interfaces with the current emergence of AI as a creative either antagonist or partner in reality. And I was going to check in. Does anyone have any opinions about the current kind of interface between what they're calling AI, but which is really the large language model systems, or the image or the audio kind of I don't know, would you collage machines? I guess it would be what it is. Has anyone got a take that we can chew on?
I'll jump in by perhaps going back to the musical analogy, perhaps the jazz music, particularly Coltrane, maybe the latter Coltrane music. Of course, I hope we'll catch a glimpse of what I'm talking about, but it's kind of like this holographic or hologrammic method. I mean, I suppose it's a holographic sonic method in the sense of the music, but obviously Finnegan's Wake's got this holographic principle working. And then Illuminatus also, it just seems like it's a different kind of level of magnification that it's happening at, but it's the same kind of, I mean, who knows how they were editing it, or how much Dell cut and how much the Dell cuts kind of led to the cut up effect of Illuminatus, but yeah, it makes me think of McLuhan's mosaic method, and then that also having a link to Joyce. Yeah, my 5 cents.
Absolutely.
Well, and I heard one person, I can't even remember who it was, say that they thought that AI was like almost like a jazz improviser, where you have all these ideas that you've gathered from everything you've ever listened to, and when you're prompted, you let spew whatever amalgam of those ideas might come out at the time, and that is like improvisation. And so it's almost like AI is being prompted, or whatever you want to call it, AI, to improvise based on the millions of bits of information that it has at its so-called fingertips, and that it's prompted to improvise off that large vocabulary, which I kind of liked. It kind of made AI more interesting to me when I thought about it like that.
That makes sense. I actually, so it's kind of funny. I think an early reaction to the emergence of the AI tools was surprise that it essentially went after the humanities first. That the thing that it was functionally best at was, if you ask people 10, 20 years ago, would be the things you thought it couldn't do, which is art and writing and music and stuff like that, which is oddly the stuff that it's the best at. And it occurs to me that's actually probably a really good thing that it came for the artists first, because if it had come for the plumbers and the car mechanics first, we would have been like, sorry about your luck. I can get my car fixed for $15. Like, I don't know that we would have been as sympathetic to that kind of overtaking of the functions of society as we are. I think it's actually causing us to have pause and think about like how we integrate it into society in a way that we wouldn't have if it would have just been like, oh shoot, I can get my toilet fixed by pressing a button. And, you know, the plumbers would have been like, hey, hey, hey. And we'd be like, I don't know what to tell you. But since it has this like emotional tendril to it, that I think we're more resistant to the larger big picture stuff. So we might actually have a more harmonious interaction with it through the transaction of our resistance, because we don't want to just hand over the keys to all our visionary professions to it. So I don't know. It just occurred to me that like there are certain things that we need, that are expensive, that we wouldn't have been able to deny in quite the same way. What do I have?
I wonder if we're gonna have like a new label for anything that was like, like there's farm raised salmon or wild caught salmon, where we have like actual human intelligence generated art or poetry.
Yeah.
I still feel like, and I haven't worked with AI that much, but I still feel there's something missing from it. And I wonder if it's like, to me, my experience of AI is that it's a collection of all this data, and all this data is put together. And I think the human part comes from something that's beyond just that connecting data together. So in other words, if you're using Leary's model, like, I don't know that AI knows about the higher circuits or can, express itself with that influence. But I just don't know. Maybe it can.
No, I think in my experience, AI lacks specificity. It can't be specific. Like if you get an AI generated image and you zoom in on it, it's nonsense. The details are always nonsense. And so that's the telltale thing, is that like from a distance, it approximates the gestalt, but it can't create like in-depth data because it's generalizing. So it's a very strong generalizing force, but it's very bad at being specific in my experience. Maybe it's something that it'll get better at, but I think the level of specificity that we kind of want will always be ahead of what it's trained on, because it needs to train on things. And I think that it'll always lag behind that. And I think humans will always have that kind of intangible advantage over it. I think it's going to be more as a tool than as all the business people just want to press a button and have something they can sell. That's everything you see is people daydreaming about that. And I think that is a dead end. I don't think that, and if it's true, then it's worthless because everybody else can hit that button too. I saw a video game executive being like, we can just hit a button and we can have 20 games that are worthless because everyone else can hit that too. And now there's 4,000 new games a day. And like, trust me, what that will do to the price point of games. So I think it's either a tool that will be, useful to human ingenuity, or it'll be something that is kind of useless overall. At least, hopefully it's not like as obviously we're going to go through this stage where it's like used to cut corners and cut jobs and cut budgets and stuff like that. And we're kind of ambling through that now. Like if something goes wrong with your cable and you try to get a hold of the human right now, it's probably not going to happen. It's probably going to be some dialogue tree that doesn't get you anywhere. But I think as Bucky says, you run into a wall enough times, you start looking for the door. And I think right now we're just running into the wall and reaching for the door.
I wonder if it's that AI kind of lacks discipline as well. You know what I mean? Like just the conversation you were having made me think of, there was an artist, I can't remember his name, who used to draw dollar bills. And he would draw dollar bills so perfect that they were counterfeit, yet he would sell them for thousands of dollars. So he would sell and they were always a little bit either smaller or bigger, so they couldn't be considered counterfeit, but they were exact, and it was such an amazing feat that people would pay way more to get one of these counterfeit dollar bills. And it also kind of brought up if you remember the author or I think it was Joe Coleman, who would use like the single horsehair brush and just create these amazing works of art that are super detailed. And I just don't know if AI has like the discipline to, like you were saying, to get that specific and to get that sort of amazing. Like we like look to these two people, we're like, how the hell would you even do that? Who has the time to actually sit there and do that, you know? And I just don't see AI giving us that type of amazement, you know?
No, for sure.
Like,
Yeah, go ahead.
oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I guess like another point to it is just to say, like, even if we kind of take off this, we take the most kind of excited kind of AI perspective and say, oh, it's not good at any of this yet, but it'll be able to do it one day. Eventually it'll be writing Lord of the Rings and all the other stuff. I mean, something that we do in conversations like this, we talk about Illuminatus and we pull apart. It's like, okay, well, why did Bob, add the extra O in Fernando Poe? Why did Bob, do this and that with the Tree of Life? Because we're human beings interested in other human beings. I mean, maybe at some point, but I think certainly not now, to look at something, a piece of even incredible AI work and say, okay, well, why did the AI do this and that? I just think it's not a terribly interesting question. I think that part of, the existing purpose and function of art is to connect human beings with, a kind of a shared conception of humanity. And at least at this stage, that kind of excludes, this, I guess, this kind of deep interest in, well, why does a robot make the particular decisions that a robot makes?
I remember seeing.
Oh, sorry.
I remember seeing Elon Musk on Bill Maher, and they were talking about AI, and of course they were getting into the possible scary aspect of machines taking over and all that stuff. And Elon Musk was saying that the reason a lot of these billionaires were interested in developing AI was to solve the immortality problem, the longevity problem. And that's what I would like to see from AI, if it's possible, is to solve all these problems that humans just can't solve, like how to stop a war or something. I mean, it's just like a huge problem, but it seems like humans don't know. But maybe, like you said, the AI is only learning what humans are programming into it. So maybe that's not possible. Maybe it, because humans themselves haven't figured out, or maybe they have, or I don't know. That sort of gets back to the higher circuits thing. Like, I think if enough people on the planet had enough access to their higher circuits, they'd realize that war is the most ridiculous thing ever, and it doesn't, never helps anything anywhere, anytime. And so why do we keep doing it, type of thing. That's what I've been reading a lot of Ezra Pound lately, and that's one thing. Bob talked a lot about Joyce, but not so much, as far as I know, about the Ezra Pound influence on him. But Ezra Pound was wanting to sort of solve that problem of violence and wars, and on the economic side of the sort of inequality of wealth and all that stuff. He was trying to, create a more utopian vision through poetry, through talking about all these things and what he called the tales of the tribe. And so I'd like to see AI be able to be more of a problem solver than just regurgitating information that's already there.
I had some reserve concerning AI, but I'm using it more and more in my regular job. And well, you don't have to expect from AI to give a perfect solution to what you want. It's like, well, a framework you can use to make something else. I work with copywriters, and they use AI, but they never use the text from AI. They use it as a base to write their own text. So I think AI might be positive in this way, that people can be more creative without having knowledge of tools in general. Might be music, in my case, it's more imagery. But at the same time, the danger is that people become more and more stupid,
Right.
because they don't need to remember many things. And it started with Google. You don't have to remember anything; just Google it up. And I think that evolution will go more and more and further. And I think the question will be whether humanity becomes more creative thanks to that, or if they just let it all go and abandon everything. And that, I think that will be the problem in the future.
I don't know. Did you guys see, like, speaking of why robots might do what they do, in South Korea, a robot committed suicide.
I heard about that, yeah.
So I was like, they do understand us, but
How did it do
it threw itself down some stairs
Wow.
because
Okay.
it was being worked too hard. So what I love about that is like, okay, like, whether that, they say that it intentionally happened, and then, even if it were an accident, like I know that there's a high suicide rate in South Korea where like the humans would project that onto the robot.
Mm.
And as far as like what AI's potential is, and like, there are all the people who are gonna try to get it to gain information to learn things like how to save them money or whatever. But considering how much data we give it, like with social media and everything like that, like how much it gets, I think that its potential could be variable and improvised enough that we could have some hope. And right now, I don't know if you guys on Zoom have used the AI companion.
See it right there.
Yeah.
Like I just
So
noticed it. I just see it like right. I'm like, I don't know what that is.
so I work for a company where I have calls like this every day. And you set up your Zoom to be able to show captions and like save the full transcript, and then you manually load the transcript to Zoom, or like, our app has it set up where it automatically does it for us, where it creates notes. It just said this meeting is being transcribed for AI companion. So it creates session notes for it. Now, before we had this, I was making my own session notes all the time. And like I continued when we had the AI, and like I would read the AI notes and I would be like, oh, this is such garbage, right? Like, and over time, like now I feel like it's more work for me because I'm always going to do my notes, but I also have to like check the AI notes and see if they're any good or if I should get rid of it or not. And like I've recognized that they've been improving a lot just like in the past, like every time I check, they're getting a little bit better and a little bit better. So
Mm.
I think I'm pretty optimistic about AI. And one of the things that I read about it that I thought was interesting, again, this could be done for like costs, minimizing costs for like for-profit healthcare or whatever, but the idea of having AI make the most ethical decisions in terms of healthcare for people, like, because I've heard of people, being rushed out of hospitals because of their insurance and this and that. And like, it would be nice if it were applied in the ethical way instead of the like, how do we save the most money way? But, we'll see.
Well, I think ultimately what would be great is because if my guess would be, and this being influenced by Bucky Fuller, is that the ultimately the most economic way and the best way are probably the same way, and that we just get in our own way of realizing that the best way to take care of the world is to take care of the world, and to not like kind of let short-sighted ideas kind of block that. And yeah, so like, so I've been thinking a lot about like you deal with converging crisis, right? Like, so,
I think it's
every
hard to make people believe that in shareholders meetings. I've been
that
like wondering the same. It's totally that, but like at shareholders meetings, they're like, what? We have to wait to see this benefit?
right,
Like
right. That's what I mean. Like, so if AI can like come to that conclusion, if that conclusion is correct and quantifiable, and the AI can actually calculate it accurately and come to that conclusion, maybe it will be seen not as like a bleeding heart, hippy dippy, like head in the clouds thing, but actually the most prudent path. Um, and like, so something I've been thinking about converging. I'm sorry, go ahead if you had something. Oh,
I
I'm
was
sorry.
just gonna say, like now banks are realizing that, like, oh, hey, if the environment goes to shit, there's no more money. Like now banks are trying to be more environmentally conscious.
Right,
So
right. Yeah, yeah. Eventually, greed will lead exactly to the kind of solutions that were derided the whole time, because it is like essentially, in everyone's common interest at a certain point to ensure the holistic safety of the biome. So, like, in terms of converging crisis, when you have like 10 big ticket alarms going off at any given time in any given place, and everyone kind of has a different thing that they're prioritizing. This person thinks it's this, that person thinks it's that, that person thinks it's that. And it's like, you can't, how do you address all things at once? How do you get to the underlying problem that is underneath all of the newspaper headline problems? And my guess would be awareness of interdependence. I think awareness of interdependence is the silver bullet that kind of cuts through everything. And when you realize that, like, you can't hurt people over there without hurting yourself over here, and that you have to come to some sort of harmonious equilibrium, where you're always going to be that battle's always going to turn over and pop up in a new form and in another form and in another form. And I don't know that that's a perspective that humans could necessarily come to en masse, like as all together. But maybe if there's a data driven footprint of that, and it should be, if it's true, there should be it should be quantifiable to some degree. So maybe there is a way that this kind of hyper logical machine can actually aid the kind of squishy soft human. At least maybe, possibly.
I would just say the interdependence, the realization of that requires a certain enlightened consciousness. So that would get to my point that the way to solve these problems, because I think capitalism itself, I wouldn't trust in capitalism to want to have the best solution. Brenton's back, and I was hoping you'd come back because it reminds me of the Deleuze and Guattari volumes called Capitalism and Schizophrenia. And my interpretation of that is that capitalism just wants to continue on, even in a schizophrenic sense that it self-destructs. And an example of that is the NRA, the National Rifle Association, that just wants to sell firepower and guns no matter what. They just want to make money at it. And if you think about it, I mean, they're going to be like killing future customers. So that's kind of schizophrenic in a sense.
Yeah, just I guess to riff off that, it's that particular language, and it's a bit of a contentious point for some people, but it's all revolving around this the Latin root or maybe Greek of the schiz, of the break or fracture, that capitalism is a system that breaks apart all systems and meanings, because it's reliant on these two kind of flows of uncoded labor and uncoded capital. So there's no particular function that a human being has. There's no particular purpose that a human being or that human society has. There's just these kinds of two forces that meet, and anytime that system kind of breaks down, you end up having some kind of ability to put those pieces together in a new way, because capitalism is kind of agnostic as to the meaning and form of human society. It kind of encourages innovation and new formations. But ultimately, D&G are critical of capitalism, and their sort of examination is, kind of, I think they want to kind of look soberly at, well, why do people want this system? Why do people invest in this system? What is it about it that makes it so difficult for people to shake off, even when very large numbers of people are sort of looking at this and saying, hey, this is destructive to my life and soul. So I'm sorry, I don't know what I missed there, but I guess that's a little bit of a riff of some of those ideas.
That's outstanding. How's that book coming along? The potato versus what was it?
Yeah, so I've just gone with it was going for like potato versus apple, and
Yeah,
everybody
that's
was
it.
sort of just kept assuming it was about tech companies. So
Yeah.
I'm going with Chaos Potato as a working title.
So good.
I sent it off to some publishers. I'm just footnotes are a bit of a nightmare. They're kind of my eternal enemy. So I'm now sort of going through and just trying to get my footnotes just formatted correctly. Once I've done that, I kind of think it seems to be a bit of too much of a nightmare situation trying to distinguish which of a fairly small pool of publishers, are accepting submissions and which aren't. And I'm kind of going to look through I can't remember what it's called, basically getting I can't believe I can't remember what it's called. Basically getting a book broker instead, getting somebody to, sort of looking at a literary
Agent.
Agent,
sorry?
like a literary agent.
Thank you. I just had a mind blank. Yeah. So literary agent, looking at trying to go down that path and see if I can find somewhere interested down that direction. But if anybody knows a publisher who's desperate for a book about Deleuze and Discordianism, please pass them on to me.
I can't imagine there's any publishers that aren't.
You would think not.
Did anyone see that podcast that just came out, the Second Oswald? It was really quite good. It covers the Carrie Thornley story, similar to how what's the British guy that does all the documentaries? It did Century of the South. Anyway,
Behind the Bastards.
No, this one's different, I think. Or is it? The Second Oswald was done by Behind the Bastards?
No. I was thinking that you're saying it's. Oh, you're talking about
what? Yeah, he's friends with Alan Moore. Steve, you know who I'm talking about?
Oh, Adam Curtis.
Yeah, Adam Curtis. So it's similar to that, except for in this one they get into Bob Wilson. They actually, so it leads into his part of the story. He's not a huge part of it, but it was really well done and really interesting. It's kind of neat to see that story kind of getting bigger, because it's so like kind of unbelievably interesting. It does seem like something that would appeal to most people. The thing that I learned that, and Steve, you might not know this, that the cover art for the Oswald Plaza Paradox. Do you know who that is? That's Oswald's mom. So I just discovered Oswald's mom from this podcast. She would go and hang out at Dealey Plaza and try to sign autographs, like sell autographs at Dealey Plaza. Is that not insane? Like, is that not like the weirdest thing? Like, can you imagine? Like, she would go there and like approach people with like a little like printed up card and be like, $5 to get your picture taken with Oswald's mom. It's just, I can't imagine anyone like. I mean, I guess you'd do it if you were there, but that's ballsy to try that.
almost Discordian.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah. I thought that was really interesting. You kind of get a sense of maybe why Oswald was a little mixed up. All right, what else do we have? Steve, you want to tell us about Deep Scratch at all?
Well, kind of, but I was just going to say, or something that struck me when you were talking about the AI a little earlier, was about what Eric was saying about memorizing the Tree of Life, you know, all those models from the appendices from the Book of Thoth, you know. So I think this is thing that these mnemonic systems, you know, these yeah, all kinds of mnemonic systems that can help all human brains kind of process when they're not necessarily connected to the, you know, the mainframe kind of idea. So yeah, I think Erica is really onto something right there. I think it is a bit of a universal system for cleansing and you know, yeah, clarifying one's mind. You know, if it can be looked at that way, both with, I mean, but as Borski was saying, you know, something like the Kabbalah, Tarot, different kind of, you know, there's these different systems that are kind of intertwined together. So to kind of untangle them is a part of the process. But I think just strictly the Tree of Life and going back to those systems throughout Illuminatus, perhaps that's one shot, you know, challenge to everybody. Just kind of memorize this, you know. I mean, my experiences is with Konakol, which I think I've spoke of before, which is this South Indian drum language. The idea is if you say it or we practice it for 108 days, then you internalize it and you've kind of, you know, you've really got it. I think I made about 25, 26 days until I took a break. But for me, that really was the evidence for this kind of mnemonic system where you just kind of say the words. You know, it kind of doesn't make sense at the beginning, but you keep going, keep trying it day after day. And then eventually this kind of new sense of time enters, you know, and then you've got it with you everywhere you go. You've got this thing, you know. So yeah, but if we rewind about what Eric was saying earlier, I think he's really onto something with that memorization of the tree, and maybe that's something for the comic or some kind of development. And then the other point was about colors within the Sephira Tree of Life. Like if there's a color system, I know there's definitely kind of tonal systems that have been applied to the tree. But then I just thought about the colors just in the aspect of graphics and art, you know. Maybe Oz has got an idea. Oh, anybody?
Yeah, are there specific colors associated with the different Sephiroth that are agreed upon?
Yeah, totally. There's like 4 tables of different colors.
Okay.
Yeah, and also if you look at Crowley's Thoth Tarot or any good tarot deck, the Rider-Waite tarot deck, they're using colors in the depictions of the cards Kabbalistically. Lon Milo Duquette's like an authority on the Thoth Tarot, and his book, I mean, he's examined the Thoth cards with magnifying glass, and he'll, you know, give you all those correspondences with colors and stuff. So colors is definitely a part of it. I mean, the Tree of Life in the Crowley iteration of it, Golden Dawn, you know, where it came from, is trying to connect everything. It's trying to include all religions, all mythologies. He connected it with the Chinese I Ching, for instance, perfumes, minerals, drugs, all kinds of things. Is they were trying for a whole comprehensive thing. But I have a question going back to Illuminatus, because I haven't read it for a long time, and I know each chapter is the name of a different Sephiroth. But I'm wondering if there's any indication of the paths on the Tree of Life in Illuminatus.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think maybe in Eric's book, I think he might highlight some of like the words that indicate the path. I know there's a thing that each chapter or each trip ends with a specific word that is indicative of moving up the tree, like
Okay.
point, plane, and it goes on and on and on from there. So I think there actually is maybe something that indicates what path it's going on. But it kind of went over my head because I don't quite understand the paths yet. So you could give me directions, and I'm like, all right, I'll take a left at the Wawa. But it doesn't mean I'm necessarily gonna internalize it. Are there also musical correspondences, like octaves or notes or harmonic scales or anything like that?
That's an excellent question, and I really don't know. Sure. I mean, there's so many people who have attempted correspondences.
Well,
That's a great question.
Yeah, I mean,
Israel
there's
Regardie has a book called the middle pillar. And I think it's one of the more recent editions that the Cicero's, the heavy Golden Dawn guys, I can't remember his first name. And he goes through and does musical correspondences with all of it. So
Oh, nice.
in the
Yeah.
back there, yeah, there's a lot of, and it ties in super good with Crowley's system as well, but it's sort of more Golden Dawnish because it's Israel Regardie. But
That's great.
yeah,
That's great.
there's also an artist called Zev. Zev created a book called Rhythm Magic, and I think it's available online. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. But that's an interesting table of correspondences that's built on rhythm, but also percussion, and it's a good study for any musician looking into Tree of Life.
Yep. My son was he just gave me a whole rap about how like similar to color theory, that in music theory, like in like the first week of art school is all about how no colors exist except for in relation to the colors that surround it, and that apparently that is also true of musical notes, that there's no true note except for in interrelation with the sounds and waves that are surrounding it. Which is goes back to if the thing we want to get to is highlighting interconnection, kind of having those schematics might be good to kind of create those interference patterns.
well, what I've done with the 8-circuit model, I call it the musical circuits, and I equate
That's right. Yeah.
equate each circuit with a note in the scale, and then in children's music, because I'm mainly I teach children, so they do also the colors. So if you think about do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, each one of those solfege syllables is aligning with a circuit. And then in children's music, they give the rainbow. So it's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, pink, red. And so the do is both circuit 1 and circuit 8 are both do, and then you have each one aligned. And what's cool about it is you can get melodic and harmonic with the circuits if you have enough exercises that are related to each circuit.
That's great. That's great. I like the idea of there being like an aesthetic tie-in with the schematics, so you can tell if there's something there because it's going to be beautiful or not beautiful. And so if you got something that's beautiful, you're going to know that there's something to that schematic. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I ever saw a diagram of a Tree of Life was at a Todd Rundgren concert in like 1983 or something like that. And the name of the tour and the album he had put out was called Healer. And I had a very extraordinary day. It was the first time I'd been inadvertently dosed with PCP because I thought I was smoking a joint of weed, and I went on a real psychedelic trip. And then I went to see a movie called Chow Manhattan, which is about this socialite named Edie Sedgwick who destroys her life with drugs. And I was like just tripping away watching this. And then I went from there to this concert on the pier in New York with Todd Rundgren. And as I was leaving the concert, I saw the classic eye in the triangle, that we were so familiar with ILLUMINATUS, on a Todd Rundgren t-shirt. So I thought, well, I got to have that t-shirt. So I went back and I went to the vendors and I couldn't find that T-shirt. I realized it was from another tour, but I bought one of the current tour, and on the back of that T-shirt was a diagram of the Tree of Life, which I had no idea what it was until I came back to Calgary, where I was living at the time in Canada. And my roommate was older than me. He was the guy who introduced me to Wilson and Crowley and all that. And he's like, "Oh, there's a Tree of Life." And I'm like, "Well, what's that?" "Oh, well, that's Kabbalah." And that was my introduction. So there's some music connection there.
Yeah. Oh, wait, Borsky, didn't you say you're working on something with the historical Illuminatus Chronicles?
Yeah, I just started working on it. I'm trying to write a text paper on the Selby.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The Selby was an imaginary mad scientist invented by what was his name again? His name.
Oh,
Flann O'Brien.
Flann O'Brien. Yeah.
O'Brien. And in this book, even where's the camera? The Selby is a central character. As very bizarre person who does all kinds of strange tests and has all kinds of strange theories. And the funny thing is, Bob Wilson took the character back for his second volume, only the second volume, apparently. So basically, I'm just collecting references, and I'll see where I get. But it's one of the rare instances in literature where an imaginary character, which is, well, apart from that one book from Flann O'Brien, appears also in other books from Flann O'Brien, but only in notes, very small notes at the bottom of the text, which often has nothing to do with the text. And Bob Wilson took the same idea and basically used the technique, the narrative technique, one of the narrative techniques from O'Brien in that book, and I find it fascinating that Bob Wilson had such a gigantic culture that you keep discovering new things in it, and I want to discover even more. So, well. The Third Policeman was the most famous book by Flann O'Brien, and it's full of notes at the bottom about the Selby, who considers darkness not as the absence of light, but as the presence of smoke and things like that.
I love the mythology around the Third Policeman. I love is that it was found crumpled up in a vase after he died. Like it was just like he discarded it. He didn't even think that it was very good. And I love that book, but it was sitting in a vase. And just like when they were cleaning up his stuff after he passed away, they found it and off it went. Also, interestingly enough, do you guys know the Timothy FX Finnegan character that starts popping up in Raw's later stuff? That's because the Flann O'Brien estate, I believe, hassled him about using the Selby, and he needed to create an analog character. So Timothy FX Finnegan is an analog for the Selby. Which I thought was interesting. Who would why would you even bother with that? But I guess someone thought enough of it to hassle him about it. Or it could have just been that I don't know if anyone actually reached out, or maybe he was worried that they would and thought that he might as well create his own. But yeah, those two characters serve the same function.
Thanks for clearing that up. Thanks for clearing that up. That's really good of you to say. That's one of those things been sitting in my head. I'm like, what? Thank you.
I think that's so interesting, Borsky, that you're looking into historical Illuminatus and the other influences and stuff to it, because I think there's a really untapped mine of all kinds of symbolism in the historical Illuminatus that we haven't gotten to the bottom of that. And my conclusion from that is, from reading Ezra Pound and this book that actually I think Fly turned me on 2 years ago, which was called 76 in the Spirit of the Cantos by Forrest Reed. And he just really analyzes Pound's cantos, and they're so intricate, the symbolism based on the seal of the United States of America and this calendar that Pound introduced. And it occurred to me that Pound is an obvious influence on the historical Illuminatus with Sigismundo and the Malatestas and different things that's starting out in Renaissance Italy, for instance. That's a big part of the cantos. And so it occurred to me that if Pound was putting so much obscure symbolism into the cantos, that likely Wilson was, being influenced by Pound and Joyce, doing the same for the historical Illuminatus, if not Illuminatus itself, and that there's just so much there that we haven't uncovered yet.
So one of my favorite things that I wish I could get confirmation on, that, but it's too late. But so when we did Tale of the Tribe, and it was the Cantos and Finnegan's Wake as the two main things, is that the Cantos deals with the journey from Inferno to Purgatorio to Paradiso, so up and down in a line, and Finnegan's Wake goes in a circle around and around. So you have the 1 and the 0 of binary creation. Or also in the comic that was at his memorial, the Ouroboros and the lightning staff, is that you combine Cantos and Finnegan's Wake and you get the Tree of Life or Illuminatus.
It has to do with the two different paths you can take on the Kabbalah tree. One way is the sword and the other is the serpent. So you have...
Oh, interesting.
No way,
really?
Arrow and the Ouroboros is about the same symbolic.
Yeah.
And neither are good or bad. It's just, they can be useful. The straight way is the well, what did I just say? The lightning bolt or the
sword.
The sword, yeah. That's the straight way, and it can be good, but it's a dangerous path, because if your consciousness grows too quickly, you can lose everything. You can lose your hold on things. And the way of the snake goes like that on the tree. That's a slow way. That's slower than the other one.
Yeah.
But you can also go back, because if you... Well, the way I see Kabbalah, everything in life is a lesson. It's the way of, if you start to see things as lessons, that makes things usually easier, even in despair or in anything you get in your life. And if you don't follow the lesson, you just get the lesson again until you learn the lesson. So that's maybe the idea, that the path can also be repeating and repeating itself until you finally get it. You can go a step further.
I like that. That's really good.
Yeah. That's very sorry that in the OTO or the AA or whatever, they have a thing with crossing the abyss, where you swear an oath to interpret all phenomena as a particular dealing of God with your soul, and you don't have to have any ideas about God or whatever, so that you can just say that that's like everything can be a lesson to be learned. It's the same kind of idea.
I like the idea of like kind of heading into strife with a like creative orientation, and like the idea that you can go in and you can fail, and then you get to try again, and you can fail and you can get to try again, because that means that when you're facing something that's terrible, that it's okay to face things that are terrible, because ultimately, the story will go on in one way or another. So I got invited to have to participate in a meeting just like this with a Ukrainian Finnegan's Wake reading group. And they saw the Maybe Night video. And they were like, they're talking about Finnegan's Wake just like we are. And so they invited me to join them. And it was really interesting. Like the idea is that it was like defiance in the face of terrible circumstances to keep engaging with art and creativity and literature and the things that people love. And like as I like literally we're in a Zoom meeting just like this, the boxes are just like this, and then pretty much with the exception of a couple of people that were elsewhere, everybody's lights went out at the same time because their electricity is rationed. So they basically share electricity. Some people in this city get it for a little bit, and then it shuts down, and people in another city get it. And then so half the people are in the dark because they don't have electricity. And then an air raid siren goes off. And don't even flinch. Don't even like it was like I was more scared than they were. And we're just like there's an air raid siren going off, no electricity, and just talking about Finnegan's Wake and just heading into the strife, still engaged in creative pursuits. It was a real because like a little bit like push comes to shove, it would be hard for me to deny that it's a decadent pursuit in some ways to while the world burns to be like kind of worried about aesthetics. But the idea is that there is kind of like a life affirming like defiance of the things that would destroy us to just keep that light going. Yeah, and I like the idea of there being room for error. That like if you don't learn the lesson here, it'll get presented to you again. Brenton, what's it? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Eva.
I feel like it's a common thing with like how we talked about seeing like dark like shadows kind of show the contrast of light and dark, and that if we don't have contrast, we don't see anything like colors, and the same thing with contrast in music. And what I learned, I don't know that much about the Tree of Life, but what I learned from it, I learned from the Book of Thoth and reading the tarot. And like one of the things I remember is that you can't really show it on a flat paper, that it should be more three-dimensional. And that like there's kind of this, it kind of reminds me from the Illuminatus trilogy, the idea of heuristic escalation, the pendulum of heuristic escalation, where there's kind of like there's always, and if you look at any plant or tree growing, there's an imbalance towards one direction that's trying to self-correct in the other direction, and that continued self-correcting imbalance is what makes it grow. So that's like my looking at these negative situations and finding a way to defy them through growth and everything. That seemed to me to be a connection of it all, and that like there are senses of peace in the tarot and in the Kabbalah where there's like a kind of sense of completeness where everything's okay, and you have to put that out of balance to get to like the next level of like balance or greatness, or where it's like a higher ordered perfection. So yeah, I feel hopeful about all of that too.
This has been really great.
There we go.
Unfortunately, I have to jump. So
Oh, that's right.
thank you very
Yeah,
much.
yeah. Oz, thank you so much for joining us. Always great to have your input. And again, thank you very much for the heads up about all that jazz. I would have missed how good it was if I didn't see your description of it, because it was just playing. I had it playing in like up in the background, and I was listening, but I wasn't engaging. And then I saw that thing from you. I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna watch this. Yeah.
Just last night, it freaked me out. All That Jazz is a movie about a guy having a heart attack, and there's bardo of it and all that. And recently I got bit by a spider like a month ago, and my foot is still swollen. And one of the things the doctor said is it could be a blood clot. So I'm supposed to watch out for any signs of heart attack and stuff like that. And so watching all that jazz
Yeah,
freaked me out.
yeah. It's real aggressive in how it like cuts back and forth too. So it's like
Hey, I don't know
That's-
if you guys, I don't know if you guys know this, but a little synchronicity between Oz and I. Um, Oz, is it true that you mastered Mondo Garage from Garage Mahal that was recorded at In the Pocket studio?
Maybe I don't remember doing that, but I did work it in the pocket. Yeah.
You worked it in the pocket, yeah. Would it have been
Yeah.
mastering? Would that have been the? But you're on the credits anyway, and that
No,
was before.
no, that's probably not me. No, I wouldn't have been mastering there. I didn't start mastering until I would have been either recording or
Recording then.
mixing. Did they give me a credit or something or?
Yeah, you're on the credits. I'm like, bloody hell,
Okay.
I know that guy. But that was before anything, before.
So it could be true because I don't remember all my credits and you just do a lot of work and yeah. So cool. That's great.
Right on.
Right. On that note, I'll exit stage left.
all right. Thank you, Oz. Thank you for coming out. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
You're
All right. So I've gone through most of my notes here. I think I hit all my points. Does anyone want to start throwing out final thoughts? Anyone want to leave us with something to think about?
Schrodinger's cat and Wigner's friend causes problems without end. Is the cat alive or dead in the math that's in our head? For according to von Neumann, it never ceases to annoy man. And the cat remains alive in half the cases, that's 0.5. And when his friend receives the news, if the cat still purrs and mews, the cat remains in suspended fate in some formal eigenstate. For in Carter's multi-space, every time branch has its place. And the cat remains alive in half the cases, that's 0.5. So lead us not to Copenhagen, nor to Shylock, nor to Fagin. The results not parsimonious, but I find them quite harmonious.
That's awesome. Well, good luck topping that. Anyway, Brenton, what are you working on besides the potato book? Anything else that we should know about?
No, not that you should know about. Just trying to. I teach Japanese, and I'm just trying to
That's what you
continually
teach? You
improve
teach
my-
Japanese? That's awesome. Is that what you always
Yeah.
taught?
Yeah, Japanese and English.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
So my field of influence has shrunk considerably at the moment. I'm very much focused on my Japanese abilities and kind of that much smaller local community and an educational community, and kind of like apart from the potato book, that's sort of where my energy is allocated at present.
That sounds like where it should be. That's awesome. Zach, yeah, I saw that Rasta sent me a thing that you interviewed Mike Gathers about the 8 circuit model. I'm looking forward to watching that. That looks really cool. What else are you working on?
Yeah, that was actually fun. Actually, Mike and I are semi neighbors. He lives super close to me, and one of my other music teacher friends taught his kids. So yeah, we hung out and hit coffee and kind of came up with that idea, and it was super fun. It was a really
That's
fun
awesome.
interview. It was kind of fun to like turn the tables, and he was the interviewee, which was pretty cool.
I love
and
his 8 circuit stuff is so good. I love his take on it.
Oh, I do too. Yeah, it's very cool, and he's really good about explaining it. My thing is I've been doing just a lot of stuff with the musical circuits, and I'm just like really heavy on my personal biases exercises. And so I feel like not necessarily enough has been said, because I think it's pretty extensive, but the theory for me, I've just like, absorbed as much as I can, and I'm just trying to go with exercises. And I realize that music is a great way to not only travel through the circuits, but the circuits is a great way to sort of develop as a musician. And so I'm writing a lot about that, and I may try to get it published. I may self-publish, but really I just work with a ton of students who know nothing about any of this.
Yeah, so do most of us, I think. How many teachers? The four of us, right? Yeah. That's also, the music thing seems like a really good way to like take that content and externalize it like in the world, in your body, which a lot of the, this when it's in a book, it's more just in your mind, and your body is just like a vehicle that's holding your mind while you absorb that information. But to play music is to involve the neurosomatic system as a whole. That seems like that's a really good way. I think that we just lost Antero Ali, and that like I'm trying to like really like listen to his advice to like be in the body, and the body isn't just a vehicle that carries around your mind, and to like really kind of just kind of like bring it more into the physical world instead of just on paper and just on screen. So that seems like a great way to go about it.
Yeah, well, and I feel like the evolution of the circuits was getting more exercise. Like Leary had a bunch of, it was Theory Leary, and then Wilson had the exercises in Prometheus Rising, but there was always this joke like who actually does the exercises, like who's really done all that, and then Antero Ali, especially in 8-circuit brain, was very exercise and ritual oriented. And so I see that kind of as where it kind of should go, as more like exercise based and actually like living the circuits rather than just reading about them.
Yeah, just thinking about it, actually like acting through it. It's pretty cool. Eva, where have your travels taken you? What have you been up to lately? You've always got a good story.
I'm in Greece now, and the
No
last place
way.
I was staying at, the cross streets, was Kalistis.
No
So
way, really? That's awesome.
Kalistis and Kalvu, and I was like, I am home in
Yeah.
Athens. But so yeah, and I'm still like teaching kids that inspire me. And one of them was writing, like, it actually started a whole project called AI Unleashed, where he does like podcasts on AI. And before that, he was like helping refugees and homeless people, and he did like one of his podcasts live where he invited people from the refugee centers to see how like AI could help them in their lives. And like, and so they are like, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I was hopeful, like the idea of everybody becoming really lonely because of social media. They might start interacting with AI more. Like, a lot of people like talk to Chat GPT as like a friend, so maybe that friend will evolve to, teach them better than they like, maybe it will answer questions for them that lead them towards coming to some of those realizations that are, beyond war and more, beyond capitalism and all that.
That's beautiful.
So yeah. Thanks.
Borsky, how about you? What you got the historical Illuminatus Chronicle thing going on? What else you got? Not that's enough, obviously.
Well, I'm also in the Collège de Pataphysique, and I have a friend there who is a micro editor. And well, I don't know if you all had seen this one he made. Oh, here we go again.
Oh, nice.
And it's full of quotations by Robert Anton Wilson in French, translated by yours truly.
Oh, I love it.
I had
Is that a mirror?
Yeah.
I love that.
Mirror.
That was my big dream. My big dream was to end a book with a mirror. That the last page would be a mirror. It's not practical. Like, how are you going to do it? But that was always my dream. That's really cool.
Yeah, well, and recently we had a little exhibit in a Brussels anarchist cafe about imaginary covers from books. So that's
nice. Yeah.
I'm interested in imaginary books as well. So I've got some books on imaginary books.
That's awesome. That's really good.
Those that exist. That's yeah. So we had a little exhibit between very bizarre people and that's it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Guys, thank you so much for coming out and for all your contributions. This was really fun. I don't want to cut. If anybody else has anything else, please, the floor is more than yours. But otherwise, again, thank you so much. We're going to do this again in the winter for Maybe Night about Finnegan's Wake. So if anybody wants to come out and talk about Finnegan's Wake, I'll send the email out to all the same people. I will warn you that because of my interaction with the Ukrainians, I'm now of the belief that this wasn't their idea, but it was the portion of Finnegan's Wake that they were reading. I found a bunch of links in there that I'm gonna go with the Joyce had syphilis theme. Like I know people feel a lot of different ways about it. I think it's actually cooler if he did. So like I love the idea of his genius being informed by a sexually transmitted disease. I think I don't know. So that may be what's on my mind. That doesn't have to be what's on your mind, but an early indication of what Maybe Night's going to be about is syphilis. So, sorry, go ahead. Yeah. So that'll be the tagline. If you want to catch syphilis, come on out to Maybe Night. So, all right, guys. So Maybe Day. So Tuesday, maybeday.net will have all sorts of stuff. And yeah, all right. Thank you so much. Everybody take care, and I'll be in touch. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. Love you guys.